Thanks so much for your time, Wayne. What a week. I think many people were possibly predicting that the ANC would lose a lot of support in a number of wards where there's just a lack of basic service delivery. Your first comments on that conversation with Herman Mashaba about not wanting to work at all with the ANC and saying that he could possibly work with the EFF depending on the decisions they take.
Yes, thank you. It's very important to listen to what the politicians are saying right now. And he has drawn a line in the sand continuously, which is saying, I and my party will not work with the ANC anywhere. Okay? So that is very, very important to understand, because when we do the math of the coalition negotiations and how we get to those magical numbers of forming a stable coalition, it's clear that the ANC cannot go knocking on his door, and he's not going to go with his cap in hand to them. So that removes the ANC out of the equation when Action SA is looking at forming governments. And then we've also got to remember what John Steenhuisen said on ENCA a few days ago, where he said, I will not work with the EFF anywhere. And I listened carefully when he said, I'll not work with the ANC in the 3 Gauteng metros. So that's his line in the sand. Now that means to me that John Steenhuisen and Herman Mashaba are going to be having quite a few cups of coffee together in the next few days.
But that's what he basically said. He said that there has been a conversation with the DA and John Steenhuisen, but he says it was a very informal conversation. But just looking at the numbers and looking at what came out with the local government elections, what do you think is the ideal coalition that could possibly happen, especially here in the city of Johannesburg and possibly Tshwane?
Okay, so when one looks at the nation's capital, Tshwane, there is a clear path. It's ironic because the DA lost a lot of seats in Tshwane. And remember, they governed there for 5 years, and in a way it wasn't successful. They had this informal arrangement with the EFF. It didn't work at all times. And now, ironically, they've lost seats. They're in a weaker position than they were before the start of the election, but they actually have a stable path because they can work with Herman Mashaba's Action SA. They can work with Pieter Groenewald's Freedom Front and COPE and ACDP and quite comfortably form a stable coalition. However, is Herman Mashaba and the Action SA going to be happy with only helping the DA in Tshwane and just leaving Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni to the ANC? And I'm wondering, and I haven't been, I've slept rather than speaking to my political contacts, but I'm wondering, could we see a repeat of what happened with the EFF giving their votes? Remember in 2016, let me just remind the viewers, the EFF didn't sit in any coalition government. They sat on the outside, but they gave the DA their votes in Johannesburg and Tshwane. Are we going to see the DA doing that in the city of Johannesburg, where they'll say, Mr. Mashaba, if you back us in Tshwane, we'll give you our votes in the city of Johannesburg. We'll vote for you to be mayor, but we refuse to sit to the EFF. It seems like you will sit to the EFF, and then we'll go into opposition. We'll support you in the key budget votes. We'll support you in the election of a speaker. We'll support you in the election of a mayor, but we will not sit in government with you. But if you help us in Tshwane, we'll help you in the economic powerhouse of the country.
Yeah, I really wish I could be a fly on that wall in those discussions, because it's fascinating how coalitions work, and you have these political parties that basically hate each other during campaigning, and then they have to sit around a table and have a discussion about how they're going to run governments. I just have one more question, Wayne. Speak to us about the issue around, if I'm a voter and I vote for a particular party in the city of Johannesburg or Tshwane, but then you have, so now I vote for the ANC, and then you have the DA that's running. That basically goes against what the electorate voted for, and many would say that's a huge concern, but there's no other way for it to be done, because that's how coalitions work. You have a number of political parties coming together to provide those basic services.
Correct. That's the reality we woke up to on the 2nd of November. Besides the city of Cape Town and beautiful Buffalo City, East London, the overwhelming amount of metros and so many more municipalities now have coalition governments. And these are difficult, as you correctly say. You can be on a similar ideological spectrum as Action SA, DA, Freedom Front, etc., but they're still competing for the same votes, and they said a lot of nasty things about each other in the election campaign. Now they have to govern together. At the same time, many parts of our country, we're in a unique situation where the ANC has lost so much ground that I almost think that residents there with polar opposite political views are saying, please, guys, come together. We've got to do this without the ANC. So you're 100% correct. People, often there's a term that you hold your nose when you go into the ballot box and just take those vomit pills and put an X-Buyer party. The same now applies to coalitions. This is very complicated stuff, and let's see what the political parties come up with in the next few days.
And then just overall, Wayne, I think if we can just quickly wrap up, you have seen the ANC lose a substantial amount of wards, metros, but also there are 66 hung municipalities. I always find that number so fascinating and mind-blowing because it just shows you how people are completely dissatisfied and they are uncertain as to which political party can actually provide what they are looking for.
Correct. We saw huge shifts in this election. The electoral map of KwaZulu-Natal has changed so much. We've seen, remember, up until this election, the ANC had never ever got up below 50% in Mpumalanga. They're now below 50% in 3 municipalities in Mpumalanga. So we are seeing people shifting their votes, not coming to the polls, and this has consequences. As you say, 66 hung councils. That means that 66 municipalities in our country are going to have coalitions now for the next 5 years. And those parties forming the coalitions have to make sure that they better improve on their service delivery or they will be punished in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be very hectic for all these political parties. Thank you so much for coming in. I know it's been a very hectic week. That is Wayne Sussman, elections specialist.